Hello and welcome to True Crime in Science, our show where we look at true crime stories but further investigate the forensic details behind them. I'm your host, Chris Carpenetti.
And I'm Eleanor Higgs, and today we're going to break down the history of the sexual assault kit, also known as the rape kit, one of the ways that evidence is gathered and tested to provide documentation of sexual assault. In the USA, many cases of unwanted or non-consensual sexual intercourse or contact have unfortunately not resulted in a conviction. In the United States, only 4.6% of sexual assault reports lead to an arrest. There are many reasons, from the stigma victims have received in the past which resulted in others not coming forward, or if victims do report the crime, then their accounts could be undermined, challenged, outright disbelieved, or not have enough evidence for legal proceedings.
In the recent past, many people did not report sexual abuse, and if they did, the evidence of said abuse was often treated carelessly and even lost or thrown out. Spousal sexual assault was even considered legal until it was finally criminalised in all 50 states by 1993. Incest and child sexual abuse cases were also thought to be so rare that they were not considered to be a problem. Even as recently as the 1970s, it was estimated only 10% of 16,000 sexual assaults were reported to the police, and only a few of those went to trial. Of those that did, they rarely saw the aggressor imprisoned. Put simply, sexual assault was not properly investigated, and it took radical thinking to determine how it could be.
Marty Goddard, was a volunteer who worked for a teenage crisis helpline in Chicago in 1972. In talking to many of the said teenagers, she realised there was a hidden epidemic of young people fleeing from their homes to escape sexual abuse. Marty noticed that tens of thousands of sexual assault cases were not followed up because of lack of protocols for collecting forensic evidence, and that many of the victims she spoke to did not formally report it.
Feeling that she needed to do something to help implement the proper protocols, Marty spoke to many professionals, including employees at the crime lab, hospitals and police stations, to get a sense of the issues that occur when collecting evidence of sexual assault, or why other pieces of evidence were thrown away. Marty eventually deduced a way to gather the essential forensic evidence from sexual assault victims in a standardised manner which could aid in prosecuting their perpetrators. The sexual assault kit, as what Marty's invention came to later be known as, was a box which contained specialised equipment to gather evidence.
Marty took her idea to Chief Police Sergeant Louis Vitullo, but Vitullo dismissed Marty and threw her out of his office. It was only a few days later, however, that Vitullo made up a near-identical prototype of Marty's kit and essentially left it to her to find funding and training for it, which she did through her non-profit group, which represented sex crime survivors. It was of the opinions of male-dominated police departments that having Vitullo's name on the kit would look more professional when seeking the funding to distribute the kits. Marty, who was less interested in the credit and more interested in getting the kit out there, trademarked the kit as the Vitullo kit under her non-profit organisation.
Financing her sexual assault kit project proved to be difficult, as many funding groups did not want to discuss the topic of sexual assault with her. Eventually, through backing from Hugh Hefner's Playboy Foundation, she received her first funding. Marty's name was relatively unknown until recently, when journalist Pagan Kennedy researched her life and brought Marty's name into the light through her book, The Secret History of the Rape Kit, a true crime story.
The original sexual assault kit included swabs for fluids, a comb to collect hairs, sterile nail clippers, envelopes to store biological evidence, and a bag for the victim's clothing, along with a card for the victims which contained information. This was before DNA profiling, so the kits relied on evidence from blood typing, examination of body fluids, microscopic analysis of hairs and fibres, and physical examination. Since the original kit, it has naturally been updated to provide further ways to collect evidence, which can be cross-examined using more recent forensic methods.
Nowadays, the survivor of a sexual assault is brought in to discuss their medical history. They are then asked to undress on a large sheet of paper so the examiner may catch hair or fibre evidence from their body. Their clothes will then be individually packaged so trace evidence may be found. The survivor will then be physically examined where their injuries are documented, and biological evidence such as blood, urine, saliva, and semen is collected. Swabs from areas such as their skin, genitalia, anus, mouth, and under their fingernails will also be collected, and a comb will be run through their hair in an effort to obtain further DNA evidence. With the survivor's consent, their bodies will be photographed from head to toe to document their injuries. All evidence is collected, packaged, and labelled to limit contamination.
Sexual assault kit contents will vary from state to state, but most of them contain a standardised set of items, including instructions for the medical examiner to follow, a form for documenting the procedure, a form stating what evidence has to be collected, tubes for blood and urine, paper bags to collect clothing and physical evidence, swabs to collect further biological evidence, a large sheet of paper so the victim may undress on something that could potentially collect any micro-evidence, dental floss and wooden sticks to scrape under the victim's fingernails, glass slides, sterile water and saline samples, as well as envelopes, boxes and labels for the examiner to collect evidence in and mark during each stage of the exam. By following the instructions, any doctor or nurse can perform the examination, but some hospitals offer specially trained personnel on staff called sexual assault forensic examiners or sexual assault nurse examiners to perform the forensic medical examination.
Further research has shown that when trained examiners are utilised, it significantly increases the chances of collecting evidence, which results in higher rates of prosecution. Once all of the required samples have been taken for the kit, it will be sealed up and sent to forensic labs to build a profile of the assailant and potentially match them to known criminals already in the system. Unfortunately, sometimes DNA is also inadvertently damaged if the victims wash or are washed by others soon after the attack. So it's advised that patients do not use the bathroom, comb their hair, bathe, change clothes, or clean up the scene of the assault.
By late 1979, around 3,000 kits were handed in to the Chicago police. In the same year, a bus driver testified against her rapist using evidence provided, and he was sentenced to 60 years in jail. Since then, the kits have been an essential tool to collect evidence, which can then be forensically examined. This is a vital first step for technologies such as DNA profiling to work properly. By incorporating the right protocols, assailants from recent crimes and crimes dating back many years have been brought to justice.
For example, in 2006, a man named Nathan Ford was found guilty of 3 counts of rape and 3 counts of kidnapping, which were linked to him by DNA obtained from sexual assault kits. Since then, more kits have been tested, linking him to additional charges. While sexual assault kits eventually became standardised and more women came forward, they were expensive to test. In today's prices, each kit costs over $1,000 to test. This expense created an unfortunate testing backlog. In 2009, a police facility in Michigan was found to be holding over 11,000 untested kits, dating back to 1984, and in 2013, the city of Memphis in Tennessee had a backlog of over 12,000. There were also thousands of untested kits across many states in the US. The problem was created by severe resource constraints, a lack of communication between police and forensic scientists, and problematic attitudes towards sexual assault.
Money and awareness have since been raised to end the backlog. In 2019, 64 rapists were convicted in the US after a backlog of kits were finally tested, with more being convicted as the backlog has been slowly worked through. Sexual assault kits have also been vital in exonerating people of sexual violence. According to the National Registry of Exonerations, there have been more than 600 exonerations in the US that use DNA evidence.
In the USA, a person is sexually assaulted every 68 seconds. If a survivor of such an assault chooses to report the crime, they will be examined and tested. The evidence held in the sexual assault kits can be extremely powerful in bringing their perpetrator to justice, but there is still much work to be done. In some cases, due to reasons such as evidence not being collected properly or too much time being left before collection, for example, for DNA evidence it needs to be collected within 72 hours of the assault, otherwise a DNA profile analysis may not work. Before a kit is sent for further analysis, the police officers need to be sure that a sexual assault has taken place. This can cause bias in some cases, as studies have suggested that victims of sexual assault are less likely to be believed if they've been drinking.
Whilst the backlog of sexual assault kits has depleted, current estimates suggest there could still be 50,000 untested kits around the US, although the true number is not known. Activists have been trying to find ways to decrease the backlog further, such as by creating a statewide inventory and tracking system for survivors to know the status of their kits, as well as setting up plans to test both backlogged and new kits. But there are also inconsistencies between the contents of the sexual assault kits between states, which has contributed to the backlog. Some states have been better at implementing reforms to test more kits, such as New Hampshire, Alaska and Connecticut, which have no untested kits yet. In California, there are, as of January 2025, 13,929 untested kits, and in other states like Maine, the number of untested kits is unknown.
Pagan Kennedy, author of The Secret History of the Rape Kit, once said, "So much of what matters about the kit isn't in the kit. It's the training of the nurses. It's creating a database, it's training of people in the crime lab and the police officers and creating a kind of common language. It's also a very heavy burden to put on survivors to ask this much of them and give them so little." So for that reason, I think it's really important for us to have a conversation about what we want from this system, to have a survivor-led conversation with people from different communities.
Thank you for watching this episode of True Crime in Science. Please subscribe for more videos like this.